is trade capture, the process of formally recording details of an individual trade or individual. So let's assume then that we have executed a trade. So the first thing that needs to happen immediately afterwards is that the trader needs to capture the details of the trade. So what is trade capture? The process of formally recording details of an individual trade or individual execution. It means the same thing. Why do we need to do this? Because we must get the details of the trade that we've executed. So now we have a legal commitment with the counterparty, so we must record the details. This is not specific, of course, to the world of investment banking. Any firm that executes any form of transaction must record the details of that transaction. But what minimum information must be captured? The trader firstly must record the trade details within the trading system. Okay, so what are these are the components of each trade. First of all, the trade date. This is the date the trade was executed. This is important that this is correct, because when later on we look at the detail of an income event, like a dividend payment on equity, for example, entitlement to dividends will be based upon the trade date. So we need to ensure that the trade date is accurately recorded. The trade time. Now this actually is the hour and minute within the trade date that the trade was actually executed. This is important from a regulatory standpoint. This is what the regulators insist upon. The reason this is ultimately for the protection of investors, and because all trading conversations are recorded, if there is the client of an investment bank, let's say, has reason to dispute the price at which a trade was executed, then this will enable the regulators to go back and pinpoint exactly the part of the tape recording, so you can listen back and hear exactly what was stated. The value date. Now this is a particular term that I would recommend using. Lots of people use the term settlement date, but I'm going to use the term value date. Value date is the intended date of settlement. It's also known as the contractual settlement date here in some markets. So I would just put a word of warning against this, that what some people call value date, other people call settlement date. I'm going to use settlement date as my third date, so we'll be coming on to that. But on trade date, just to be clear, you know the trade date and you know the value date. That's the intended date of settlement. Now, rolling settlement is what is typically the case in most markets these days, and this is what it means. That if you have a trade date on a Monday here, then if the market operates on a standard cycle of trade date plus 3 days, so +1, +2, and therefore this is +3. So in a T+3 marketplace, you have your value date here, or contractual settlement date is what that is standing for. And what this means is that every new day from a trading point of view, it's a further 3 days out from the value date point of view. As you can see, every new day you push the value date further out. So this means new trades executed on these trade dates will have these value dates. What used to happen historically, this happened in the UK, was that, let's say in a 2-week period, every trade executed in that 2-week period would all have a value date of a specific day afterwards, which meant you had no settlements to do for 2 weeks, and then you had a mountain to climb on this date. This is generally regarded as not being the ideal method of settlement, and so the concept of rolling settlement was introduced, well, many years ago in some markets, and this is the most popular method now. So in terms of settlement cycles then, currently, as we're speaking today, for US equity and UK equity, it's T+3 is the default, that's T+3 business days, the default settlement cycle. For US Treasury bonds and the equivalent in the UK called UK gilts, T+1 is the standard. And if you trade in Eurobonds, that is also T+3. Now, should we expect these default settlement cycles to remain this way forever? No. Actually, for UK equities here, years ago that was T+10. Then it moved to T+5. Then it moved again to T+3. That's where we are today. Should we expect this to move to T+1? There's every possibility that it will in the coming years. I would also add, though, that these default settlement cycles, so the settlement cycle being the number of days between trade date and the value date, these are only default. So if you wanted to trade for something other than the default, if you want to do T+7, that only requires you and your counterparty to agree to that. Then, of course, if your counterparty does agree to it, you then must remember to capture it with the correct value date on it. Obviously, you need to record whether you are buying or selling. Can there be confusion with that? Yes. Where an investment bank sells to a client, for example, then you could record this from the perspective of the bank itself or of the client. You just need to decide what makes most sense to you. I would suggest it should always be recorded consistently from the investment bank's perspective, which in the example of our trade before, the 10 million Marks and Spencers would be recorded as a sale. Okay, in terms of the quantity, obviously this must be recorded. For shares, this is a number of shares, like 1 million shares. So the equivalent of the million shares would look like this if it were a bond. It would be expressed as a currency. For example, if it's a dollar-denominated bond, then it would show the currency plus the quantity. So this is what I'm referring to here, is the typical way of expressing quantity of shares and bonds. The security. It is essential that you record the exact issue that has been bought or sold. Now, this is less of a problem to get right if you're talking about equity. And the reason is, if you were buying Xerox Corporation shares or selling IBM shares, there's normally only one main category of share. But for bonds, there can be, particularly for an organisation like the World Bank, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, they have hundreds, if not thousands, of bonds in issue at any one point in time. And if you looked at the detail of a bond, you can have identical issuer name, coupon rate, maturity date. The only thing that distinguishes this one from this one is this is dollar denominated, this is denominated in euros or GBP. So you have to be really careful with this. But all securities have unique identifiers. Those unique identifiers, the global code is called the ISIN, the International Securities Identification Number. This is a 12-character code that is intended to be completely unique. So at the end of the day, if you and your counterparty are disputing exactly which security has been traded, this is what would need to be used to specifically identify it. Also, in some markets, you can trade a single security in more than one marketplace, and Nokia shares is an example of that. able to be traded in Helsinki and in Frankfurt, and used to be also in the US as well. I believe that these are the only two markets currently where you can trade. So therefore, recording that it's Nokia shares here is not enough where it's possible for it to be traded in more than one marketplace. Also, the price. If it's equity that you're trading, then we said before in our example of the Marks and Spencer's trade, a price of £6.10. That is £6.10 per share. But a bond type price is a percentage price. So for example, if we say a bond starts life at 100%, because of supply and demand, that price could go to a discount, like for example 98.15%, or go to a premium, for example like 100.76%. So bond prices are expressed in percentages, whereas equity prices are expressed in what's known as units, like currency plus amount per share. Later on, we will be coming back to seeing how use of these prices will reveal itself in terms of the cost of buying a security, or the proceeds that you get from selling a security. The internal owner. Now, if a proprietary trade has been executed, then it's common within investment banks to have your trading department, which is made up of different trading desks or trading books. Each of those desks or books will specialize in a certain type of security or a certain currency of security. An analogy I would make as to what a trading book is, if you like, this is one department store which is made up of a number of departments. Each of the departments will of course be assessed by the management of the department store based on the profitability that they make over a given period, like 1 month, etc. It's exactly the same concept within an investment bank. So this means that every trade, so for that trading book there, whenever they execute a trade and they capture the details of the trade, it must also be captured which trading book has executed the trade. So you could say it's an internal owner. So it's an owner within the investment bank of the trade, that is. The counterparty, you must record the exact counterparty, including its location. So, for example, it's if you've executed a trade with UBS, the Swiss company, if you just say UBS, is that enough? No, because there are many, many branches of UBS. You could trade with UBS in London, UBS in Zurich, UBS in Geneva, etc. Each of those are separate legal entities. We must know precisely which combination of entity name plus location, because we will see this will have impact on our ability to settle and where trades settle. So here's an example then of what I would call the trade skeleton. You've got these trade components that we just mentioned here, and here's an example. Trade date 20th of October, trade time of approaching 9 o'clock in the morning, value date, that's T+3, and forgetting non-working days like weekends. The particular trading book, in this example we're saying that we're buying a quantity of 12 million Xerox shares at a price of $2.88. And by the way, this is a net price, so there's no commission that's going to be charged on that. And the counterparty, entity name plus location. So as we said before as well, just to remind you that counterparty and security static data needs to be present to enable successful trade capture to occur.